We work out of Palmas. We are most important. We are ASF dads. Our daughters are alums. They graduated in 2020 and 2018. No, 2020 and 2022. I'm sorry. And one of them is studying in Boston, biomedical engineering. So the whole thing about makerspace is crucial for her. She has developed a club that deals with 3D printing hand prosthetics and giving them out to people with no resources to have a prosthetic. So we feel this project is very close to our hearts, to the community of the ASF, and also very important for us. And as Tracy was saying, we're a large organization. Design is always about teamwork. We're a group of 60 people. Over half of them are women, so this is very important for you. Design, the future of design is going to be driven by women, and I want to make a point of this because design empowers. Design gives possibilities to imagine better and future worlds, and I strongly encourage you to think that. I was telling, Said is not only my partner in the office, but she's also my wife, 32 years, and we had a kind of a 33 years together. We studied together at Iberoamericana, then we did our masters in the US. I did my PhD while she was working in the US, and then we've had the office for over 22 years. But fundamentally for us is to understand how we work. I think that Tracy hit it right on the nail in the head when she was saying it. First of all, you have to listen. You have to understand what's required out of a specific project. And we always say that our process, we feel that conversation is the best tool to design. If you listen well, you'll be much better able to design well. We like to think of evidence and arguments and deliberation as ways to get. With design, there's no necessarily a good or a bad design. There's better and worse. And it has to do with how we put forward arguments, how we deal with preserving part of the structure versus demolishing, how we deal with doing things, even aesthetic decisions. Why choose certain colors, certain materials, certain textures? We think that every project requires good concepts, strong ideas. This is that we think that design is very, let's say, artistic, and it's all about intuition. Concept is about connecting the mind with the hand. There's a saying by a Finnish architect who wrote a book called The Thinking Hand. And it has to do that the hand is the way we materialize ideas. And for us, this is an important work. Not only the work we do, but also in the maker space. We like to think that the architectural brief, the mandate that we get given is fundamental. We ask our clients to work very clear on what they want us to do. The what do you want is fundamental to have a better sense of developing a better product. We like to think that someone else, preceding work, someone else has already made a good solution, but also mistakes. If you remember Isaac Newton's maxim, he says that if I was able to see farther away, it was because I was able to stand on the shoulders of giants that came before me. So there's always someone else who has gone through the same problem before. And I think it's important to recognize that. We like to think through strategies and scenarios. We believe in high quality design, but we also believe in strong visual and verbal communication. Design is about communicating ideas. You may have the best design unless you're able to put them on paper, to do a great presentation, to convey those ideas to a client. They will remain on the drawing boards. And we are actually committed to the process and to the products. Our office has been doing work, and we have been receiving interns from the ASF for over 5-10 years now. And for those of you who are thinking about architecture or design or urbanism as a possible career, give us a call. We would love to have you in the summer and have you for a week. And I've extended this so that the ASF knows that you can try out and see. I mean, it's difficult to pick what you want to do for the rest of your life. Well, it's good to have good experiences and to discover whether this is what you actually like. So we've done buildings, all types of buildings, from cultural buildings such as the Spanish Cultural Center. We've done infrastructure projects such as Metrobus and Mexibus, which are bus rapid transit lines. Some of you may know some of those. We've done offices, cultural spaces, but also academic buildings in Monterrey and in Mexico City. I'm going to talk very briefly because I suppose that most of you want to know what the project is about, and then maybe even get a chance to walk and look what's coming ahead. First of all, and I hope everyone can see, I'm going to sit just so I don't interrupt the view from some of you. Each building, for us to work, actually, let me see if I can, do you mind if I'm going to sit here? Let's switch chair.
Thank you, John.
I think it's fundamental to understand that no building happens in a void. You always act within a site. And for us, the site was ASF campus. So the ASF campus, which has existed for over 70 years or 80 years, you can only do certain things. You have to almost tiptoe and do a ballet, and to understand where you can actually build something new, where you can actually demolish, readapt, and think about the program. And this, though it seems like fairly easy, no building comes out in a vacuum and you just start from scratch. You actually need to understand what are the codes, the regulatory frameworks for you to do certain things, and not to do certain other things. The other thing is that we work within a building that has existed for almost 20 something 30 years, and it is not our job to say whether this building is perfect or has areas of opportunity, but it is a building in which hundreds or thousands of students have gone through, and it has become their home and part of their community. So we need to recognize and adapt, as Tracy was saying, where you can actually operate. So we have a large building which is like a gallery, which is the covered gallery that you see out here. But then we have in the front almost a 600 meter space, which was the space of the intervention. Buildings, in a way, they're always, when you look at, when you've traveled, you look at buildings, and buildings are almost like evidence of the time they were built in. So when you look at Baroque architecture, or when you look at colonial architecture, you know that this was built within a certain framework. Even with much younger buildings, you can identify certain traits and certain decisions that were taken in the 1980s and 1990s, before you were born, but when I was studying architecture. And it explains certain things which may seem crazy or odd now, like who would do like such a strange corridor, sort of this swirling corridor to get from one corner to the other, or why is this shaped in a semicircle, or why are there so many small columns? So some of those decisions are very much related to choices, aesthetics, and programmatic choices that were taken at the time this building was made. But the building is very clear that it has a gallery in the center with classrooms and other spaces such as the library. We're sitting actually up here. But this was the area where you could actually fit in a new building, which would be the makerspace. Actually, and I think that Tracy pinpointed that why are makerspace? When I was growing up, there was no such thing as a makerspace. There was a model room, and there were places where you could have a drawing board to build. Those were the tools for design, and those were the tools not only for design disciplines, but for everyone related to thinking about creative processes. So the makerspace is a fundamental part of the ASF philosophy, because they believe that when you interact with new tools, with new ways of thinking about making things, your brain operates in a different fashion. So what we call the program is actually the functions and the uses that happen in space. Buildings are not only about columns or ceilings or floors or handrails. It's not only about the color and shape of and materials of buildings, but design is also about shaping the activities that happen in a space. So it's not only about the built environment, but what happens in the built environment. And for us to get to a right program is fundamental. And this is always at least a two-way road. So we work with the community, we work with the students, with the staff, with the faculty to define what's needed. So what about the Agora? Of course, we need to think about a space for meetings. What about the cafeteria and a place for cooking classes? What about a place where you can actually go out and breathe as you like to do sometimes and have a terrace? And the same goes for an orchard or toilets or offices and the educational kitchen. So it's fundamental to see that a good program allows you to make a much better design. So it's almost like, think of for those of you who like to cook, it's almost like having the recipe. If you start cooking out of scratch, without understanding that, and you start doing a cake, and then you go into the pantry and notice that there's no chocolate, and you were thinking about doing a chocolate cake, you're in trouble. So the program is a little bit like the recipe. You need to have the ingredients, and the right ingredients is the right amount of butter. Do we need more toilets or less toilets? Is the orchard and the educational kitchen the right size? We need to make sure we have the right ingredients for a program. And then we need to have and understand the relationship between these ingredients. Do we want to have the toilets next to the kitchen? Do we want to have the orchard next to the Agora? And we establish relationship between the different parts of the program. And we convey them in ways that everyone can understand them and can give their input. Because I explained, we believe in input. Everyone has a challenge. There's no like I said, hierarchy in who takes these decisions. As architects, we are the ones who facilitate the conversation, and then we discuss whether, when you understand certain parts of a program, you say, will this work better than in another configuration? And we start designing. And in designing is actually arranging those parts of the program and making sure it works right and well with the pre-existences. And for us, it was to do like a small piece of architecture, almost like a box within a box. Why a small box? Because we're already surrounded by this set of classrooms and this set of other spaces, in which the only lobby, the triple height space, was a place where we could fit a new piece in which we could have the Agora on the lower floor, and then makerspace on the second and the third floor with additional programs. So if you look, this is the existence of the columns. We need to preserve those columns. Why? Because those are preserving the roof. It is said that it is more important, and think about kind of sustainability and questions such as climate crisis. The less we build, let me go back back one step. The built environment, the fact that we build and someone made that column out of concrete, means that we are bringing materials from other parts of Mexico. We're putting a lot of energy, and this is consuming a lot of energy. So the built environment is a very important ingredient in the question of climate crisis. So to a certain extent, the less we build, the better. The more we recycle, the more we adapt, the better. So someone could have said, oh, this is the opportunity to tear down the whole middle school and do the building as we want to have a new middle school. But sometimes you need to say, like, hold your horses. Let's see where we can adapt, where we can do selective demolishing and recycle, which is a fundamental part of design. So this is about building the most possible impactful program with the least intervention. And this means retaining the columns that keep the roof. So it is a building that happens underneath the existing roof, in which the structure, which in a way is the core of the building, how the buildings support themselves. They have walls, they have columns, they have beams and slabs. This is a way you make sure the roof doesn't fall or the floor you stand happen. So you have one existing, if you look at the big columns, are the columns that existed and support the roof. But then we need to have a secondary system, which is a smaller steel elements that will sustain the new maker space. And then as we build up the building, it is kind of an axonometric view. Like I said, we have the agora, then on top we have this slab that connects to the existing building, and then here we have the program of the maker space. We have a facade made out of glass and aluminum metal elements. And this is what the building will look like. So we have the existing roof. We're still working a little bit in terms of the color of the facade and how this will look like. But the idea that this will be a transparent, you're working with the machines, but you're actually looking out into the playing fields. We want this to be a building which has a relationship with the context outside, in which the act of making things is connected to the world. You are aware of what's happening. What time of the day is it? What period is it in class? And things like that. So this is only the existing roof, as you may remember. But this new piece, it will be more about cleaning the space and developing a new way to have the program. And then you will access the middle school. We will kind of do a new access through the same position of the building. And then we'll have a terrace, cafeteria, the orchard, and the educational kitchen. But this will be the core of where you design, make, and think with your hands. And this is where we're actually very, very happy and excited. We want to make this also a building that has that's very much related to nature. So we have these planters and almost hanging gardens, which kind of if you look at this building, and this in the 1980s and 1990s, no one was thinking about vegetation, and no one was thinking about the role that plants had in buildings. And suddenly you are sort of learning, for those of you who have weekend homes or love to go to Valle Bravo or wherever you go out because, and the pandemic also taught us this, that you want to be in contact with nature, you want to be in contact with vegetation. So buildings need to have that capacity, that as part of the educational process, you develop buildings which are far more sensible to nature. And this is the agora. It's a reconstructed agora. It is a kind of as Tracy was saying, it is an agora now where someone speaking at the front will be able to convey their message much better and be heard without having the echo of such a big room. Back in the 80s and 90s, no one was thinking about acoustics in the same way that we are aware now. But even ways of thinking about more flexible ways of thinking and accommodating. Even now, you think of this space, and we're kind of cramped together, but there's a kind of good connection, and people can hear. There's people standing up. Well, we need to think about spaces where you can have that kind of a meeting, and then it extends out into the vestibule. But the idea is also that there will be tables outside. There will be people working. You can actually decide to work either outside or inside. And this actually creates a building which is far more connected between interior and exterior. And then the idea of the maker space is like a two-story place. So it has an open staircase. You enter and then you get connected to the second floor, and then it has an interior staircase. And we were trying to make the most out of a very tight space. So this is what architecture does. You never have unlimited resources. You need to, if you have a certain amount of money or a certain amount of time, you make the most out of those resources. So for us, it was important, and working with Tracy and the whole team is to make sure that everything we wanted could fit in this space, but also to establish the possible relationships for new types of machines, new types of making things, new types of ways of learning. So we also have on the other side of the terrace, we have the educational kitchen, and we have a stair going into the orchard. So it is for us, for those of who likes to cook here. Does anyone like to cook?
A little bit.
Okay. So maybe 4 or 5 people here. There is a kind of connection between cooking and being aware about you cook and the way and a makerspace, which is about making things. So you think about processes, you think about ingredients, you think about materials, you think about outcomes. But most of all, you enjoy the process. And for I think the school is aware that the kitchen is a kind of a makerspace, and in the act of making things, you learn about the world at large. So this relationship for us between the kitchen and the makerspace is fundamental. And when I say never trust the renders are important and nice. They're ways of representing ideas, but it's also about spaces of possibility. Are we supposed to think that this will be the kind of tables that we use in 10 years or in 5 years? Who knows? But we need to provide an environment in which we anticipate what type of machines, what type of work is going to happen. Is this going to be a high table or a low table? We need to provide a space that will allow for those possible changes. And so I think that the most important thing is to create almost like let's say a warehouse of possibilities, a place in which you can have multiple things going on, but in which, whether it is the library of materials, or whether it is the agora, or whether it is the offices and community spaces, or the terrace at the kitchen, you convey ways of allowing to communicate what this building will do. And we work with models. So the makerspace will also be about creating their own types of models, but for us, it was important to test out through physical work what the building could look like. So I think this is the last one. I know some of you may be excited or not about visiting the work, but a few things before I end. First of all, doing for those of you who do creative work, whether it is writing or painting or doing models, you know it can be a painful job. It never comes out easy. Sort of productive things are hard to do. So the same goes with doing a building. So they say to have an omelette, you have to break some eggs. So all the dust, the noise, all the hassle that you've been undergoing the last few weeks or months, and I don't know when you get out of class, how many weeks? So, one more week?
Next week, yeah.
One and a half. Okay. So hopefully we can advance the most during the summer, so that when you return in August, September, there will be a beautiful finished building that gets to be occupied. In the meantime, my apologies for all the dust, for all the noise, and for having to go around walls and having to bear with this lack of space. And for those of you who, my cousin who's graduating this year from upper school, he kind of went at me and said, "You're destroying the fields and we cannot play soccer anymore." And I say, "Pablo, it's just a few months." So when you think about buildings, you work for 4 months to get we work for 6 years to design, to get approvals, to do fundraising. Then we work for a few months to make a building, to build the building. And then you have 30, 40 years to enjoy the building. So it's a little bit like life. So questions, comments?
All right, guys, this is your time.
What was like the most challenging part when you were designing?
Dealing with the client. No.
I would say getting the permission, right?
The permits. The permit. So we like to say there's 3 very important aspects of when you approach a building. The first one is the site. Where do you actually build a building? In this case, it was a complex site because it was a pre-existing building. So like I was saying, you have to tiptoe. You have to know where to make a cut, where to kind of go around columns. You need to go to a structural engineer and say, Could we do without this column, or do we need to preserve it? Do we need to reinforce? So the site was very complex. The second, the program was a very tight program. It's like trying on a kind of a jacket that just fits you perfectly, but you need to make sure that the whole program fits, because everyone has ambitions. And if it was up for Tracy, she would have said, "Oh, I'd love to have more machines here," but there's only limited budget and limited space. And the third one is code, because we live in a city, in a time, in a world in which rules and regulations matter for many reasons, which is perfect. First of all, to make sure buildings are safe. You don't do things in which a building can fall down. For those of you who remember the earthquake of 2017, if you don't have codes, buildings can fall down. Second, every site in the city, including the site of the ASF, has allowances of how much you can build. You could not do a skyscraper here in Bondojito. So you can do a maximum square meters. And to get the permit approvals for a building and a site that has existed for many, many decades, and that's at the limit of how many square meters you can build, that was an issue. To get, because it's an educational facility, you need to get the permits so that it complies with every regulation. And just to get the approval, it took literally years. And it is something that we need to work. So between the renders and the model and even the budget, there's so many other variables, and you need to be, as a designer, aware of these variables.
Guys, I think we're ready to head out to the site now.
Yeah, let's do that.
So what we're gonna do, if you can line up 2 by 2, come over. I'm gonna give you a hard hat.
First of all, thank you very much.
We only have 5 minutes left.
Yeah.